Today we're going to be diving into probably one of the most talked about amplifiers that's hit the market in the last 90 days. I saw these amplifiers at Exponent, and it's from a company called LAiV, and the name of the amplifiers are the Chorus. I am genuinely excited to share my thoughts, my feelings, who these amplifiers are for, because I believe they're very affordable. My name is Adrian Alexander with the Absolute Sound. Let's get started with the review. Who is LAiV Audio? LAiV Audio has been around since 2023 and they're out of Singapore. A couple years ago I had a chance to review one of their DACs, and for $2,000 I was impressed with the build and the sound quality. So why this product? I think this is a great value. I think it's reasonably priced. And if you decide not to buy both amplifiers, you can buy one and run it in stereo mode. Now I'm going to be reviewing the Monoblocks. One of the things that stood out to me immediately and honestly made me smile is how flexible this amplifier is. If you purchase one amplifier, it operates as a stereo amplifier delivering 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms, 80 watts per channel into 4 ohms. So for many systems, that's already enough power to create a deeply satisfying, immersive listening experience. But here's where, in my opinion, here's where things get interesting. I think LAiV made a very thoughtful decision. And this is what I mean by that. If you decide later that you want more performance, more authority, more scale, you can simply add another amplifier. Each unit can be, this is a mono configuration, can be configured as a dedicated monoblock, producing 120 watts into 8 ohms or into 4 ohms. I love this approach because it feels like the amplifier grows with you. You're not replacing anything, you're building on what you already have. Roughly $2,000 for a pair when configured in monoblocks. These amplifiers can clearly be aimed at music lovers who want a taste of high-end performance without stepping into truly extreme pricing. Now, I'm not going to compare these to my past LAiV 260.8 monoblock amplifiers. That wouldn't be fair. Those live in a completely different price universe, obviously. The question that keeps running through my mind while I was listening to this: can a $2,000 pair of amplifiers generally pull off the music and deliver a high-end experience? That's what I set out to discover, and I have to say the answer surprised me in some meaningful ways. Let's talk about the build quality. The first thing I noticed before I even powered them up, the build quality was great. They didn't feel like budget amplifiers at all. In fact, the moment I picked one up, I remember thinking, this feels serious. The chassis is beautifully machined with a finish that catches the light in a really, I would say, refined way. Everything feels tight and solid. There was no sense of compromise here. No rattles, no loose parts, nothing that makes you question, well, for this price range, they can't sound good. Actually, the craftsmanship was outstanding. I mean, seriously, even the connectors have that satisfying presence, that feel when you plug things into them. Something I always appreciate because it speaks to attention to details. So visually and physically, these amplifiers feel like they belong in a much higher price category. They also, I was surprised, they also run surprisingly cool, which to me was a relief because I happen to own Class AB amplifiers and sometimes they get a little bit warm. There's no special ventilation with these amplifiers and you can put them anywhere, so you don't need a large rack or anything. Honestly, I think LAiV really nailed the industrial design here. They managed to create something to me that felt elegant and purposeful. Connections. Let's take a look around the back because I know this is something that many of you care about. I know that I do. You get both balanced XLR inputs and a single-ended RCA inputs, which makes integrating these into your system incredibly easy, no matter what gear you're using. The speaker binding posts are excellent. They're solid, smooth, easy to work with, whether you're using banana plugs, spades, or even bare wire. Everything to me felt secure. There's a standard IEC power inlet, so you can enjoy experimenting with different power cables. That's a plus. You have that option as well. But what really sets these amplifiers apart, in my opinion, and what I kept thinking about long after I finished listening, is the upgrade path. You can start with one amplifier and you already have a very capable stereo setup. Then when you're ready too, you can take things and add a second unit and run them in monoblocks. Personally, I like a monoblock configuration for me. And this just isn't about more power, it's about refinement. Each speaker gets its own dedicated amplifier, power supply, which can lead to better channel separation, improved imaging, tighter bass, and a greater sense of control, especially with more demanding speakers. There's something really satisfying about knowing that your system can evolve like this. It feels like intentional, almost like LAiV designed this with real mind listeners in mind. So let's talk about the sound. That's what we're here for, right? The very first thing I noticed when I sat down to listen, surprisingly, it wasn't the bass, it wasn't the dynamics, it wasn't even a sense of power. It was the silence, and not just the quiet, but that deep, almost eerie kind of silence that makes you lean in. The background, in my opinion, was incredibly black, and because of that, the music seemed just placed where it was supposed to be placed with the instruments. Some of the recordings that I listened to, some of them I thought I knew inside and out, but I did notice this, the faint decay of the piano note lingering just a little bit longer than expected. And the recording space, it seemed like it was wrapping around the instruments. Now it felt like layers of music that was being revealed, almost like someone had lifted a veil. Nothing felt forced or exaggerated. There was a sense of ease, like the amplifier wasn't trying to impress me. It was simply letting the music breathe. Actually, these amplifiers were very musical. I do remember thinking that. And honestly, that's something I found a little bit more and deeply engaging. The soundstage is where things really started to pull me in emotionally. The width is excellent. I got a sense of space extending well beyond the speakers. But what really caught the attention was the depth. There's a feeling that you're looking into the music rather than just hearing it in front of me. I felt like the instruments aren't just placed left and right. They exist in layers, with real distance between them. The vocals, I noticed, stayed beautifully anchored in the center, almost as if the singer was standing right there in the room. Also, I noticed the individual instruments have their own space to breathe, and that the separation makes everything feel more lifelike. I was really surprised by that, especially for the price of these amplifiers. What I noticed on well-recorded tracks, I found myself closing my eyes and just getting lost in the placement of everything. Everything almost instinctively pointing where each musician seemed to be. That sense of realism, I also sensed that in experiencing listening to these amplifiers. Let's talk about the tonal balance. What impressed me most and what kept me listening longer than I had planned was the tonal balance. What I also noticed is nothing felt exaggerated, nothing felt artificial. Everything, in my opinion, just sounded right. An example, the bass is tight and controlled, but also textured. I didn't just hear the bass and feel the shape of the character, i.e. the kick drums, have a satisfying punch, and the bass lines to me seemed easier to follow, almost inviting a deeper into the rhythm. I'm a big mid-range fan, and this is really where the magic happens. The vocals have a warm and body, and there's an emotional quality that makes the performance feel intimate. Pianos carried weight and presence, and the acoustic guitars sound beautiful and natural in my experience, like you could almost hear the wood resonate. I noticed the treble was extended and detailed, but not harsh. There's a sense of air, openness without fatigue, even during longer listening sessions. I think what LAiV did here was incredibly difficult, and I think LAiV did a remarkable job in demonstrating that. Music listening. I spent quite a bit listening across different genres, and each one revealed something new to me. With jazz, I was drawn into the space between the instruments, the subtle interplay, and the sense of air on each note. I love female vocals, and that felt intimately and emotionally engaging, almost as I mentioned earlier in this review, as though the singer was standing in the middle of the room. Classic rock, I'm a big fan. And now, these amplifiers brought out energy. I had a sense that I kept wanting to turn the volume up. It reminded me in my early listening years as a teenager. Acoustic recordings were very good too. I was surprised, as I mentioned, about the acoustic guitars. It felt like I could hear the wood resonate. But what really stood out to me is how quickly I stopped analyzing these amps and I just found myself enjoying the music. And it was a great experience, and for me, that's the ultimate goal. When everything disappears and I can just simply enjoy the music and I don't have to get too analytical and try to listen for that and listen to that. It just was an engaging experience, and that's the reason why I love this stuff. I just get lost in the music. These amplifiers provided that. Now, who are these amplifiers for? In my opinion, everyone. But, well, you could start with people that want to start a system. Let's just say, for example, that you have a budget of $5,000. I mean, you can do the math, but you could buy the single amp and turn it into a stereo amp. That's $1,000, a good pair of speakers for $1,000. I'm sure LAiV has a preamp. You'd have to check on their website. You're into this system $3,000 to $5,000 with a single amp or two amplifier configuration into monoblocks. Now, speakers I have are YG Ascents, and I also have some speakers called, I did a review on those are by master artists, and I hooked both amplifiers, ran them in mono configuration, and they both sounded great. Actually, I was really surprised. And sometimes, you know, when I look at smaller packages, I always used to think with amplifiers, they have to be big and beefy, and that's the only way they're going to sound good. Well, these sounded great, and the sound, and you don't need a whole lot of rack space, and if you're in a small apartment or bookshelves or even floor standing speakers, I was more than happy with the sound. Now, I listened to them through digital, analog, and reel-to-reel, and I was very surprised. Again, my head kept saying, and I forgot to mention this, it's like, I can't get this straight. $2,000 and you get this kind of sound, or if you want to start out, $1,000. They're beautifully built, they sound great. I think this is a home run for LAiV. Now, you have to buy direct from them. They do not have dealers, but they're great to work with. That I can tell you. Conclusion, I enjoyed my experience with these amplifiers. I think LAiV has created something very special here, because you can start out with a $1,000 investment and have a 2-channel system, or if you want to spend another $1,000, you can have monoblock system. And really, you can be into a nice system for $3,000 to $5,000 if that's what you choose to be. LAiV is a direct company. Again, they're out of Singapore. I had a great experience with these. I was really surprised, quite frankly, because sometimes my mindset is the bigger the amplifier, the better the sound, the more dynamic, the more punchy. Yes, these amplifiers don't compare with a $15,000 pair of Past Lab reference amps that I use in my system, the 260.8. But I think the value is incredible. And if you're just starting out, or you want a second system, or you just want to listen to these in a different room, I think this is a great value, and I think LAiV did a very good job. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos, and you know what? We hit 100,000 subscribers, a little bit more, and that's because of you. So I thank you for the time and the kind comments, and thanks for watching the videos. Again, my name's Adrian Alexander with The Absolute Sound. See you next time.